Indian manufacturing in general, when you talk about SaaS in general and just like, the implementation of software,
Yeah,
I think it's a very rural and conservative industry. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
definitely.
Uh, and to get the tech adoption,
Hmm.
it's to be a really strong moat on the back end.
Hmm.
More often than not, it's always the price, right? And I think that was one key piece of learning that we had, that no matter how good your software is,
Yeah.
um, you're going to get mass adoption only if it is backed with the right set of price or credit. There's this company in India I'm deeply inspired by. They're one of the leading B2B companies
Hmm.
called Zetwerk. They're a unicorn.
Yeah.
Um, and, from what I've heard and seen in the videos, their story also started off with a SaaS-based approach.
Yeah.
And I think over time, like, you end up connecting the dots that, okay, I have so much data in front of me, so much intuitive elements in front of me because of the, like, everyone starts with SaaS. And then you end up realizing, exactly, like you end up realizing the purchase price and the sales price and everything.
Hmm.
So it's really natural for you to diversify into selling the commodities and the product itself. So yeah,
Right.
I think I'm aligned with what you guys are building, but I wouldn't be surprised if you guys like diversify into actual product itself.
Yeah. So yeah.
What's interesting is in the US, there's a company called Paperless Parts. They do
Mhm.
things similar, as in for custom component manufacturers like SaaS, but the way they started was a marketplace, and then
Yeah.
they were burning too much money, so then they switched to SaaS.
This was a little bit of the opposite
Yeah,
approach where they started with the marketplace, but then they realized the actual problem is somewhere else. So yeah, I think initially everyone has that issue of finding the real problem.
No, that's a very valid point because marketplaces in general are notoriously hard, right? Because you've not got just one side to cater to, but the other side as well. So it's really easy to, like you mentioned, burn money if you're not like hitting the right metrics, hitting the right audience, getting the right products, commodities out there. It's funny you mentioned that because there's when we started at Magma, we were taking a very low MOQ based approach. So there's this company in the US. I lived in the US for a couple of years as well. I did my bachelor's there. And there's this company called Fair and Tundra. And, these are primarily D2C based marketplaces,
Right.
yet B2B, so that's something we started off as.
Hmm.
But I think like you mentioned that, people just figure out as they go with what sort of products they want to inculcate.
Yeah.
that's really cool. So do you think you took did you research those companies a lot while you were starting, the ones in the US?
Yes. So actually, Magma started when I was also 2 weeks away from my graduation.
Hmm.
And I was actually working at that time. I was working at this company called MSI in the US. It was in Hayward in California, Northern California. And uh, it was in the B2B space, similar building material ecosystem. But I think uh, deep down, we were always inclined on commerce and
Hmm.
the role of tech. And like I think Neal mentioned, I also came from a very similar background, so it was kind of a easy foot into the door to actually build a layer on top of it and then see how it goes. So yeah, I was researching about Fair and Tundra and everything when I was in the US, and that's how things went along.
So, to get started, can you tell us what is Magma? Because we looked around, we went through. So now you said it's a marketplace, but it also sells a AI technology company, and it helps like businesses upskill or manufacturers upskill their shops. So, but what exactly do you think you guys? What is the main problem that you guys want to solve?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, Magma is a B2B manufacturing platform. We typically work with factories with a vision of enabling them to manufacture better and sell better.
Hmm.
I think our broader vision is revolved around the China plus one thesis.
Hmm.
I believe that a lot has been talked about the shift of Chinese manufacturing to India, to Southeast Asia, with, of course, India being on the forefront,
Yeah.
but very little about whether these factories in Asia are actually ready. You
Yeah.
know, a good example I always like giving, and I think Neal can attest to it,
Hmm.
is that, in a average factory in Asia, say the machine needs to be heated at 1400 degrees,
Hmm.
but you would be surprised if it's running at 800 degrees because, hey, it helps you save your gas costs,
Yeah.
Uh, so in an industry which is deeply penetrated with not so standardized factory floors and SOPs, I
Yeah.
think the broader vision was, how can we build a platform that across these multiple touch points enables these factories to manufacture better, sell better, and most importantly, eliminate the churn in customers they are facing. So I think to talk a little deeper about our operating vertical. So under Magma, we upskill the factory in a couple of ways, starting with raw materials. So we've got a raw material business where we act as a procurement marketplace for these factories. So every raw material that's required on a process level for these factories, we act as a marketplace for that. We've got an energy and logistics business as well that acts as, again, a procurement marketplace for these factories for their daily consumption requirements.
Hmm.
And we've got a suite of tech products to digitize the factory floor. So I think the broader vision is that, as a factory, how can we power you, whether it's your commerce, procurement, sales, or just factory floor dynamics.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you start with you started with the procurement and then now you're moving on to like the modern technology, or did you start with the technology and then shift to the procurement first?
Yeah, I mean, so for us, I don't have the right answer for that because it would be unfair to say either of the two. I
Yeah.
think we learned on the job, but I think the right way to look at it is procurement first, because you're dealing with factories in India, and the only way you can get at a seat in the table is if you're giving the right products at the right price at the right service.
The
Uh,
wedge. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So what were the like your 3 years of college leading up to you starting Magma, or even before that, like your experience? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was always fascinated about manufacturing in general.
Hmm.
And I think the kind of ecosystem I grew up in, commerce was always, something of a key interest. I think what really spurred a lot of my um, vision and approach in life was when I visited China when I was 16.
Hmm.
Um, and I accompanied my dad for his procurement. He had some work, and I think just looking at the vision and scale of manufacturing, I knew it would be a pretty cool industry to, like, settle down into. But that being said, we never came from a background where, we could set up industries ourselves, invest so much capex. But deep down, it was always a dream that if I could, like, play a role somewhere where I get to visit factories, I get to be a part of the ecosystem. I knew I'd be pretty happy. And I think growing up in and just spending time in the US, I think that's what I've noticed as well,
Yeah.
that the over reliance on China as a manufacturing hub, I think that was real.
Hmm.
And uh, I mean, I come from Gujarat. I speak Gujarati, so part of my like role at the company I was working for was procuring materials out of the Morbi region in Gujarat, right? So I think that was just another added factor to really, like, take the leap of faith.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, the China problem is definitely like it's in a like you can see it everywhere in the US. Like people are just like desperately looking for like different options. And I noticed like one of the things you tweeted was like there's a huge I don't remember exactly, but I think you said being able to fulfill customers internationally across borders allows that's like the next level of going from like just it was I'm paraphrasing, but I don't remember the
No,
exact.
I get what you're trying to say. I recall that. I think um, what the broader vision is that, there's a factory in India,
Right.
right?
Right.
And we're going through a macro shift. There's procurement processes moving out of Southeast Asia to countries like India and Vietnam.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot's been talked about how cool that is, how exports are rising, how great the economy is looking. But very little is being talked about whether the factory is actually ready.
Right.
That tomorrow, say, if a buyer from Italy is procuring out of a factory in India,
Right.
uh, would you be as excited to see the SOPs and communication and the production quality and the parameters and the supply chain being met on the same level as that of the Chinese counterparts?
Right.
And 9 out of 10 times, the answer would be no,
Hmm.
right? Uh, and I
Yeah.
think that's the sweet spot for us to really solve, especially the youth, including you guys, to really build something in the space.
Yeah, definitely. I think Indian companies don't have enough like skin in the game to know exactly the quality of what it takes to work, like the quality of the logistics, quality of the packaging, what's expected, the standard way of working internationally. That's just like that, like they've not been exposed to that. They've just been
Yeah,
exposed with like cutting corners and like allowing you to like just get the cheapest thing out.
yeah, absolutely. And I feel like um, that's one of the reasons why, despite so much anti-dumping duty and trade wars,
Yeah,
yet despite that, we're doing so well. So imagine, like, once like it's at where it should be, things would be rock and rolling, right?
100%.
So, you're of course like a very young founder, and Magma is doing like really well. That should. And what are some of like the challenges that you faced while growing this at such a young age?
Yeah, I get asked this question all the time, that, you're young and, like, you're sitting with folks who probably do business in a much more conservative fashion. Manufacturing is a very high velocity, high scale industry. People think twice before making decisions, and it's a very high LTV oriented model, right? Manufacturing, supply chain, these things need to happen on a routine basis. They don't change overnight. Um, but I feel like the answer to that question is that the color of money is green, no matter whether you're 22, 32, or I feel like if you're able to procure and sell a product uh, at a rate which is ideal to all parties, and of course, keeping in mind the right value added services,
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of like scope for anyone and everyone to come and play in. But that being said, I think the some of the challenges that I recall during our early days was rolling up the sleeves, because you're not coming with a privilege that you'll get a 20-member team from
Right.
day one, and you'll get to like have your distribution team, you'll get to have your sales team. It's something you over the course build onto it.
Hmm.
uh, I for one have been fortunate that we have ended up raising rounds of funding, and we're in the private equity space, venture capital space, that we've gotten that unfair advantage. But I feel like uh, you know the more you shake hands in this manufacturing ecosystem, it's a very belly to belly space. So everyone will know everyone, and I think that's one way to build upon it.
Yeah,
That
definitely. I think you're just being humble by saying that it's unfair, but I mean it's definitely like your hard work and like it's pretty impressive to even be able to raise that kind of money at with like having like to prove yourself, even to investors. That's pretty
No, I
impressive.
think I think one thing we always internally discuss as a team. Most of our team members are older than me, much more mature, and I think one way I always like to frame it is that yes, we've worked very hard. It's been a good time spending time doing what we love. That being said, there's been a lot of luck as well. It's of course not too normal to raise so much funding in such a short period of time, but I feel like market is always good for good companies, and if you hit the right metrics, if you follow the right discipline,
Right.
and just have that sort of irrational optimism, good things come along the way.
Yeah.
that's that's awesome. And it's amazing that you brought that up, because that was another question I had, was like, what was your like for the first like pre-seed round that you raised, was it a tough decision for you to go and raise funding, or was it clear that you needed to
Hmm.
raise a round? Like, did you ever consider staying bootstrapped and not raising money?
Yeah, no, I considered that. I think in the first 2 months when I was transitioning out of my time in US back to India, I think the early thought was that I'm gonna give this few months, bootstrap it, build what needs to be done,
Good.
and then kind of decide to go on and explore the venture capital path. But I think over the course, we've I had a couple of mentors. I think credit goes to them. who helped us shape the vision and really put us out there. I think at that time Magma was just a paper plan, but to be able to raise funding even at that stage, I think it's all credit to our mentors who have ended up like building great companies themselves, right? So one thing that I always suggest to people is always have like a mentor who is a little ahead than you in the journey, not too ahead, but a little ahead, because you'd be surprised. Like people are always ready to help if you ask.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's one thing that's amazing. Like even for example, right now, like you just got on call with us, like yeah, like just by asking and yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
So what's the grand vision? You said that some people like helped you or even like define the vision. What's the like the massive vision that you have for the company, like in the next 10 years, say, for example?
Yeah, I think we see ourselves working with the 20 million small and micro manufacturers that we have across Southeast Asia. I think you always want to look at the bigger picture, because not just one industry. We don't want to stay limited to building materials, but across how many factories, how many industries, different units across different verticals, we can ensure that Magma powers them, Magma upskills them, and ensure that the kind of products, commodities we supply branch down into catering to these wider industries. I think that's going to be the broader vision. I think ceramic industry, building material industry is just a starting point for us. We've already started making inroads in the energy business, and yeah, just uh, ensuring that while we scale as a company, we continue building that share in the wallet on a per factory basis, because like I mentioned, B2B is a very LTV oriented business. These things need to happen on a routine basis. So how fast we can scale without compromising on the wider vision that there's going to be every factory that's going to be powered by Magma one day.
Right. What is the LTV? Sorry, can you like clarify?
LTV essentially stands for lifetime value. So customer lifetime value essentially means how long the factory stays with you. So say you're a factory who's procuring raw materials from Magma's marketplace, procuring energy from Magma's marketplace, is part of the Magma's tech stack. So I think LTV essentially refers to like factory staying with you until the churn happens.
Right. So, when you say procuring energy, what is that like? What does that hold? What do you mean by?
Yeah, so we are suppliers of bulk LPG and bulk propane.
Oh,
So these are required by our factories for their
right.
production processes.
Got it. So it's yeah.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, thank you for clarifying that. That makes
Yeah, of course.
and do you like in terms of like competitors, do you view someone like Infra dot Market as a competitor, or like what are some people that you like watch out for in this space?
Well, there's definitely been a lot of players building in different spaces, right? Like you've got a set of folks building the digital layer between factories and retailers. You've got folks like Magma building a layer between factories and their procurement processes, and you've got like folks building a layer between factories and the end consumer, which is sometimes going to be a trader or a exporter, or just like a large ticket size buyer from other country. So the answer to that is it's not a zero sum game. Currently in our industry, I think we're the fastest growing company. We are not competing directly with any folks, because if we have a demographic, we have a cluster, we have a different GTM. But that being said, yeah, I think there's room for enough players to play in the same space, because I think building materials and manufacturing in general is one of the biggest spaces to build a business in.
Definitely. I think
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many different like problems to solve. Like
Yeah.
and so many of these companies plug into each other and work parallelly. And even in the US, so there are some companies like Fulcrum, which is like an
Mhm.
ERP system, and then
Mhm.
so many small or like paperless parts, which is what we're looking at, plugs into that. And there's like four other like other software things that plug into Fulcrum as an ERP.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Like you said, it's not a zero-sum game because
Yeah.
everyone focuses on fixing one problem really well and then
Yeah.
integrates with each other.
Yeah, and I think one should not overthink it, right? I
Right.
think
Okay.
if your factory requires and you're able to provide it, I
Right.
think there's no need to overcomplicate things. You're actually building an enduring business with a broader vision.
Definitely. So, did you always know that you wanted to come back to India after finishing university?
I always knew I wanted to start a business. I think I tried a lot not to enter this industry. Frankly, during COVID, I actually took over my father's business because classes were online. I moved back from the US to India. But at that time, I think one thing that I was not too keen on was the traditional practices and the way business is being done on a routine basis. Just how any average Indian factory would be operating. And I think that's one split second where I thought that okay, maybe a life in the US may not be a bad idea if I could just stay in the same ecosystem. But you can't take it out of like what you really want to do. So I think just looking at like some examples in my life, watching some mentors doing really well.
Yeah,
Just allowed me to like take some really cool decisions that okay, I'm 22, and for the next 2 years, I've earned the right to actually like go after my dreams because you won't really get these chances too often in life.
100%.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was anyone? Is there anyone specifically who really inspired you to, or anyone you saw and you felt like, or any inspiring Indian entrepreneurs, or even in the US who really like,
Yeah, I definitely read a lot about like a lot of people actually, but I fundamentally believe that as a young entrepreneur, when you're starting out in your journey, it's those people in your early days who help
like,
you actually set your career on a good pedestal, right?
mm,
For me, it was I had a great time being mentored by Subin Mitra, founder of Groyo. They're backed by like Alpha Wave, Tiger Global. I think Groyo is one of the best B2B companies in the world I know.
wow,
And I say that with a lot of humility because I would want Magma to be the best B2B company in the world, but we still haven't got there. I think there's the level of metrics they take in that company. There's just still so much hustle left in that company, right? So I think that's one person. And I think all in all, in my personal life, um, I've really looked up to the journey of just my family.
yeah,
Where it doesn't always have to be business, but just things and accomplishments in life. So yeah,
that's awesome. Uh,
yeah.
Oh,
so,
I have a question for you guys actually.
oh, yeah,
So this is all of this. I don't have too much context, but I would love to know like where you guys are at your journey and
yeah.
if you can just talk a little bit about your company and yeah.
So we're at a very early stage. When Akshay, like you want to tell the
yeah.
story of any?
So in March I was visiting India and
Mhm.
like towards the end of March, beginning of April, visited a friend's factory which where they do like injection molding with plastic um and stamping, and he was complaining to me about how they had to respond to about 70 RFQs or requests for quotes that month.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
um, we had already built a project that
Yeah.
was based on like creating quotes, but for
Different industry.
for like
So
service businesses. So I thought maybe I could help out with that. And I also knew that Neal also had like a background in manufacturing, so decided to like see his unit and visited it, spoke to his
Mhm.
salesperson, and I think that's what convinced us to like start working on it. And
Mhm.
um over time, like it's been almost 2 months now, and we've just been trying to like soak up as much as we can over the past 2 months. And um yeah, I think right now we're still like
So yeah, we went to like a bunch of expos in the US. spoke to some to like narrow down our ideal customer. Or is the market really in India, or is it in the US? Do people in India even face this problem? Are they willing to pay for it? We're still in that process of like just getting a lot of iteration and like
Yeah.
speaking to a lot of people, which is kind of why we created this, to get some like to be able to speak to more people and get to know the industry much better.
Sorry, please go ahead.
Oh, no problem. So I was saying also like we've been developing a product, but still in progress, of course.
So we both are like CS majors, so we just like building products. So in the first few months, we just kept like coding with like no customer. We just kept building product and realized that okay, this is like something that already has been done a lot. This is the previous thing we were building. So now we're taking a lot of different approach, like trying really hard not to like write software and like really understand the problem first. So that I think it's been a good journey to learn, but
Yeah, of course.
Also, yeah, I think like a vision with this is also like get more like younger people excited about manufacturing. Of course, that's not our like only audience, but goal is to like have like more.
I mean, yeah, like Gen Z, the general opinion of manufacturing in our generation is not like the most exciting, right? People don't be like, oh yeah, I don't think I want to do that. I don't think I want to work in this industry. So it's about understanding.
It's not a sexy industry for like young folks to tap into.
Right.
So I get that.
They're building rockets or like something that's like like actually. So it's about understanding what is that gap between. I think a lot of people are just not even exposed to the industry unless they have some kind of family background or some kind of.
Agree.
So people don't even know what's going on in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think what you think is.
I can take one final question and then I have to jump into another meeting. But yeah, it's been great like learning about your guys' journey, and if I can be helpful in any way, I think you know where to find me. You've got my WhatsApp number. I'm not as active on LinkedIn. But you'll definitely hear back from me if you ever reach out. So yeah.
Definitely. We'll keep you posted on that. And we'll send you like a quick demo video once we have a product also.
Yeah, sure. Happy to float it around.
Yeah. Had one last question. What are some books that you've read recently that have inspired you? Like
not just recently
or overall, yeah.
Yeah, I've found myself to be more of a podcast person in the past few years than books. And I love listening to like Nawal and of course, David Pereira, Nassim Taleb. I used to read a lot about Christopher Hitchens. And there's this book called Letters to a Young Contrarian. When I was 18, I was applying for my colleges in the US, and I remember actually quoting one line out of that book as part of my essay. So it was like like the essay should be like 120 words or so, but I just like wrote one line and submitted it, and that was out of that book. So that's how like that book is like ever since I was young, that book has really like helped me shape a lot of my opinions. So you guys check it out.